G'day. Welcome to the Global Day of Action in support of the Indian people's struggles for democracy and liberation. The Global Day of Action is part of a month of solidarity with the Indian people organised by the International League of People's Struggles, ILPS, to step up global support for the struggles of the Indian people who are suffering attacks on their living standards and social rights and suffering from reactionary legislation and other fascist repression aimed at preventing them from asserting their very basic rights as peasants, as workers, as farmers, as minorities and other people. The February month of solidarity was launched on February the 4th, and other solidarity activities have been occurring since that time. Today's Global Day of Action is to step up solidarity activities across the globe in support of the mass demonstrations involving hundreds of thousands of people in India which have been taking place, and in support of the mass strikes that have involved 250 million workers or more coming out in solidarity with the demonstrators. These actions by the Indian people are a magnificent and inspiring response to the reactionary Modi program and atrocities. As part of our actions, the ILPS is supporting the call for and circulation of a sign-on statement to repeal the three farm laws deregulating the agricultural industry and in which the Indian farmers have been protesting about, amongst other things. Late last year, the ILPS organised support and solidarity with the Indian diaspora globally who mobilised against Modi's atrocities, such as the Activities Prevention Act, demanding its repeal, and against the fascist violence against minorities and other violent acts against the Indian people by the state. ILPS and its member organisations, country-based chapters, regional committees and commissions across the globe, and other allied networks are dedicating a month of solidarity during February to online and offline activities which will shed light on the wonderful struggles of the Indian people and intensify international solidarity with those struggles. At this Global Day of Action, you will hear key speakers expand on some of the issues facing the Indian people and how they're dealing with them in their struggles. Again, we welcome you to this Global Day of Action and thank you for your support and solidarity. Long live international solidarity. Support the struggles of the Indian people for democracy and liberation. Down with imperialism and all reaction. Len Cooper, Chairperson, ILPS. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone. Solidarity and warm greetings to all. I am Paul from the International Coordinating Group of ILPS Commission 10 and part of the Global Secretariat of IPMSDL. Welcome to Structures of Oppression, a webinar on caste system. This webinar is organized by IPMSDL, ILPS Commission 10, supported by many of our partners, organizations, and solidarity initiatives for the Indian people. This event is part of the February 2020 Global Month of Solidarity with the Indian Peoples with the theme, Support the Fight of the Indian Peoples for Democracy and Liberation. To announce to everybody, we are also live in Facebook pages of the following: ILPS Commission 10, IPMSDL, ILPS Asia Pacific, and CNS. You can please like and share, invite your friends to watch through Facebook or here on Zoom. As I've mentioned, this event is an effort of the ILPS, one of the biggest anti-imperialist and democratic formations. It supports and develops the anti-imperialist and democratic struggles of the peoples of the world against imperialism and all reaction. While ILPS Commission 10 is one of the 20 concerns of ILPS which focuses on the rights of indigenous peoples, national minorities, oppressed nationalities and nations for self-determination and decolonization against discrimination, racism, and national oppression as perpetrated by imperialism and local reaction. while the other organizer, IPMSDL, is a global movement of grassroots-based indigenous peoples organizations and advocates committed to advancing the right of indigenous peoples to self-determination, land, and life. And I am Paul, a part of the global secretariat of the International Indigenous Peoples Movement for Self-Determination and Liberation. Again, thank you so much for attending this event. Our event is about a very interesting, very much entrenched, a 3,000-year system of social division. The India's caste system is perhaps the world's longest surviving social hierarchy. Despite the constitutional abolition, the caste system, the social practice of untouchability, remains. And the affected population comprises around 200 million, living in everyday stigma, discrimination, if not deep-seated oppression and violence. With the rise of fascism and attack on people's basic rights and freedom, the current context of COVID-19 and the imperialist dominance and crisis, why is the situation and struggle of the lower castes and the Dalits remain an important question within and outside India? That's one of the questions and the topic that we would like to discuss tonight. With this webinar, we wish to understand the situation, lay down the background, and unpack the intersecting aspects around the caste system and people's rights and lives, and try to locate it on the wider international struggle and global uprising against discrimination and oppression. And in response, it is equally important to know the people's resistance. And at the end of the webinar, we look forward in identifying steps on how to build greater understanding to generate stronger international solidarity with oppressed peoples and minorities. I know you are all excited to listen to our panelists and discussants. So please, if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to use the Q&A and chat box. So let's not take this any longer. Let's start. Today we have an amazing set of panelists and discussants, so I hope you are all ready to listen and share your inputs. For our first panelist to discuss on the background, history, political and ideological intersections about our topic and the caste system, let's have the editor of the Revolutionary Democracy Journal, Mr. Vijay Singh. Mr. Vijay, you have 20 minutes for your discussion.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. So I will start off. One of the comrades was speaking in Australian, so you don't mind if I speak in English?
Yes, please.
Okay. Now, I will proceed in my task, my job was to give a theoretical direction to this question of caste. But I'll start off by pointing out some of the problems in a brief way that the untouchable caste, it's a word I don't like, but it should not be hidden that there is a class of people, a strata of people who are considered untouchable. Now,
Comrade Vijay Singh, please move a little bit away from the camera so that your face comes out full.
Okay.
Thanks. You look much better now.
Thank you very much. But I need to see my notes. Okay. Now, the caste question in the modern Indian society affects itself in many ways. And I will briefly mention some of the ways it affects the working class, Dalits as working class. It affects Dalits as agricultural laborer, and it occurs Dalits who have gone through the education system. It's very interesting that when we look at the the caste composition of the Indian working class, two things stand out, although they are generally hidden by the establishment thinkers and writers. The first thing is that the organized working class the pensionable working class, which works between 9 and 5 or 10 and 6, is almost entirely composed of upper caste workers. It's very interesting. And that means that the people who are engaged who are contract workers or are some other kind of worker without a pension, they are largely composed of people from untouchable or what we call Dalit backgrounds, and who are denied the facilities which are given to the working class by the Indian state. These people, we saw the film just before the beginning of the program. We saw the film which mentioned the manual scavenging. That is, the untouchables are required by social law to engage in manual scavengers of carrying feces in baskets on their heads from areas where there's no regular sewage system. And where there is a sewage system, what happens is that the untouchable workers are sent in by the municipal authorities to enter into the sewers and clean up whatever blockages have occurred. So you can see that any kind of what is called dirty work and any kind of extremely hard work is reserved almost for the Dalit community and for the untouchable community. So that is the situation in the working class, that actually the Dalits are outside the structured working class. This is very significant because it also means that the political participation or the trade union participation of the untouchable workers is limited, not entirely limited, but partly limited. Secondly, in terms of agrarian labor, we find that the untouchables are largely engaged in agricultural labor. They are the backbone of the agricultural labor community. Generally, they do not hold land. Historically, they were not permitted to hold land. And they face a number of discriminations because they do not have access to water. They are limited in the agricultural work they can do. And as again, the film pointed out, when there was example was given of a recent gang rape of an untouchable lady, landlords consider that it is okay, it's all right for them to engage in sexual violence on the untouchables because this has historically taken place. So this is how untouchables are affected in the agrarian sector. Now, in a limited way, over the last, since British times, in a limited way, and even today in a limited way, the untouchable communities have given rise to sections which have achieved some education. In British times, the law said that yes, untouchables have the right to engage in education in school, but they must sit outside the classroom. Not in the classroom, but outside the classroom, because they were considered untouchable. But today, all kinds of problems remain because in school there's discrimination against untouchable students. In colleges there's discrimination, and in the university there's discrimination. I remember there was a very big struggle in Delhi University in one of the hospitals. And the reason for the struggle by the untouchable students was that the students were deliberately failed year after year by the upper caste teachers. And so they carried out, this was about 15, 20 years ago. And and in that hospital, not only were they being failed deliberately, but also in the dining room, there were special tables where untouchable students were allowed to sit. And there's all kinds of language which is used about the untouchable students because they are called legally part of the scheduled castes. The middle class students refer to them as shaddus, you see. This is a derogatory term which is used about them. So this is a situation in the field of education. And if they want to have a job afterwards, there's another round of discrimination against the Dalits. Now, so how did all of this start off? I would just like to point out that in your introduction, it is written that caste system and untouchability go back thousands of years, and this is absolutely true. I would just like to point out how the structure of society was such that it discriminated against the untouchable communities. Now, in the villages, because obviously agricultural society was dominating for thousands of years, and perhaps you know that Marx considered that India constituted Asiatic society. Marx did not consider the Asian societies to be feudal. He considered them to be pre-feudal. He considered them to be pre-slave society. He considered them to be Asiatic societies. And in the Asiatic societies, he considered that in different ways, control over water was the crucial thing, not just control over land, but control over water was very important. And until British times, it is very interesting to note that the central state dominated, of course, in the construction of canals, which were necessary for agriculture, but it is generally not known, only known by modern researchers, that control over water wells was also controlled by the central or local state. It was not possible for any person to dig a well without the permission of the local government or the central government. Even if you wanted to repair a well and you wanted to use tiles for constructing a well, you had to have permission from the local government or the central government to do that. So not only canals were tightly controlled, but water wells were tightly controlled. And naturally, control over water disbenefited the untouchable communities. Not only did they were not allowed to construct proper wells with bricks and ties, they were not permitted, without permission, to make wells which did not require machinery of any kind, machines of any kind, what are called kacha wells. I don't know how to translate this, kacha kuan. They were not allowed to construct that without permission. And so what you had was that if you engaged in a little bit of agriculture, you could not build wells to access that water. And naturally, in a tropical, semi-tropical country, or even in an arid country or desertified area, you needed water for agricultural production. So this is how the ruling classes controlled the untouchable communities. Not only that, that they did not have access to water. When they did have access to water, they had separate wells from the other castes, which would be outside the village. The untouchables were not allowed to live in the village, but they had housing outside the village, and there they were allowed to have wells, which they could use for their own facility. But they were never allowed to use the wells of the other castes. And if they did use the wells of the other caste, they could be injured or killed. Anything could happen. Now, so this is really the ancient history of the caste system. And this obviously does not, in a full form, exist today. That is why we say that not that India is a caste society, although it is, there are survivals of the caste system. Those survivals are very nasty, but the whole society is not running as a result of the caste system. I mean, for example, in the film you showed before the discussion, we find that the untouchable person could come from the countryside. He did not have land, and he could find some kind of job in Delhi city where he could earn $3 or $4. Okay, so you do not have a fully operating caste system, but you have very strong survivals of the caste system as an integral part of Indian society today, which generally the bourgeois intelligentsia and the government and the judiciary do not like to recognize. Now, I would just like to point out that the question of caste has always been examined by Marxists. And I will start with Marx, and then I will refer to some of the experiences of the Indian Communist movement and the Soviet Communist movement, how they looked at caste. I think the most profound remark was made by Karl Marx when he, in his writing, which is generally called Grundrisse, and Grundrisse was the initial draft for Capital. And there is a very interesting line. In fact, if you look at the Grundrisse, you look at Marx's writings, you look at Capital, Marx is always talking about the caste system and the village community in India and how it affects. But this one line is the most revolutionary line to understand the caste system. And that is that before capitalism, there were three kinds of dependent labor: the caste labor, serf labor, and slave labor. Now, I consider this to be a devastating analysis of caste, serfdom, and slavery. Marx is saying that caste is a form of serfdom and it is a form of slavery. I think there is no great thinker who has been more profound in his understanding of caste. Now, secondly, the I want to mention that apart from Marx, his writings are not in a consolidated article. His articles are his discussion on the caste in the village community and the type of labor, the type of landlordism is scattered around all his writings. So you cannot say, this is Marxism on caste. You have to read the whole of Capital if you want to understand what is Marx's understanding of caste. Now, the Soviet historians and commentators and analysts also took an important and great role in the analysis of caste. And for example, the Soviet writer and revolutionary who became a revolutionary in the Russian Civil War, and he came to specialize in the studies of India and other Eastern countries. And he has written extensively on the caste question. There is a book by him published in 1948, only in Russian, I'm afraid, and that deals extensively with caste. Maybe I'll deal with that later, because he had very interesting things to say, generally about caste, but he had his interesting analysis of the great leader of the Indian untouchables by the name of Dr. Ambedkar, who in a concentrated way summarizes many of the problems which untouchables face in Indian society. But also, the CPI, if you look at the documents, continually is looking at the caste question in descriptive terms. It is also looking at the caste question in terms of practical terms in the revolutionary process. And basically, I would say that when the CPI was a revolutionary party at that time, it spent a lot of time looking at the caste question. And I would just like to give two citations of this. I just want to quote, under colonial rule in 1937 and 1946, there were general elections of a small section of the Indian population. If you had landed property, then you could vote. Now, so in the 1946 election, I will just give you what the CPI said, and I'll read it out if it's not a problem. So it made an appeal to women, to youth, to workers, all sections. And it said that our communist candidates in 1946 are Hindu, Muslim, touchable, untouchable, and all kinds of different nationalities. And this is the what the Communist Party appeal was to untouchables. It said, to untouchable humanity. The Communist Party appeals to millions of untouchables, wherever they live, that through the battle of our party for new villages and new towns, they will gain the most as the most oppressed section of our people. The Communist Party assures them that it will always fight against every form of social oppression from which they suffer, and for securing equal economic and political status for them in the government of the country. In implementing the program this is very important, in implementing the program for settling landless laborers on fallow land, that is barren land, the Communist Party shall insist that untouchables who form the large bulk of landless laborers be given first and special attention. So, in the course of the um, um, agrarian revolution, the untouchables would play a very major role. Now, documents are documents, but there is evidence that in real political Have you been able to hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. You have 2 minutes left, so please, if you
Sorry?
can.
Sorry?
You have 2 minutes left, so you can.
Oh, okay. Well, I can speak for 3 hours if you like. Now, secondly, the revolutionary agrarian revolution, which took place in Telangana between 1946 and 1949, the bulk of the struggling people who were engaged in the struggle for revolution were again untouchables. If one reads the documents very carefully, the bulk of the fighters who were fighting with arms, primitive arms, they were untouchables. So in this way also, the Communist Party in its revolutionary days, it played a very important role in the upliftment of the untouchables, and in the factories carried out many struggles to prevent workers and management discriminating against Dalits in the factories. So I will end here because the next papers, I have many papers which I wanted to discuss and all that, but I will not be harsh on you, and I will end now. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to speak.
Thank you so much, Vijay. That was comprehensive and really giving us a background on with a emphasis on the roles of the Dalit, even the historical background of the untouchables, the caste system in the production in the society in India, and giving us insights on the role in the labor and agriculture, very much vital part of the society and how it molds the current situation. So for everyone, let's let that talk sink in and really absorb the discussion. But for now, let us watch a video first before we go to the next speaker. This is a video, a reading of the poem A Dalit Woman and the Land of Goddesses by a Dalit poet, Aruna Gogulamanda. Her poem is said to reveal the hypocrisy of the dominant Indian culture that boasts about celebrating women as goddesses by challenging the caste norms and taking us to the lives of their community. Let's all watch this.
Dalit women in the land of goddesses. She was told not to wear a blouse, to allow every male to watch her as a device. She was told to bend her back, not walk straight, to fill the tender tummies, to keep herself a bait. She was told to toil all day long in the fields as a human machine deprived of food and water. She was told to swallow the pain of not feeding her baby, though her lactating breasts pine to satiate its hunger. She was told to take the insults, jeerings, beatings, and sexist assaults for being born a woman in a cursed clan. She was told to take the daily 1,000 cuts of sexist remarks, acts, and assaults of her man and master. She was told that she was a bad woman, a bloody sanitary pad, used but hated with disgust. The relentless sun beats on her dreams of beauty, and youth that sacrificed in the service of the land, the hut, and the master. Her eyes, through dry hollows, bear silent witnesses to thousands of deaths of her mothers, daughters, and sisters, their dreams, respect, and their bodies. Her calloused hands, her unkempt hair, her cracked heels, her wrinkled skin tell the tales of living through fears and years of centuries and millennia of violations and deaths. She was told she was dirt, she was filth, and in this sacred land of thousands of goddesses, she is called a Dalit.
That was, again, a poem, A Dalit Woman in the Land of Goddesses by a Dalit poet, Aruna Gogulamanda. Thank you so much for that. And before we move on to our next panelist, let me just acknowledge and give a shout out to our attendees. I think we have here some of our friends from OPDP, Ogiek People's Development Program, all the way from Kenya. We have Daniel here. We have our friends here from Hong Kong, from the Philippines, from India. We have here our friends from the Northeast, from Australia, and from PMS from India. So everyone, thank you so much for attending tonight. Okay, so let's move on to our next speaker. Although in 1948, as we know, negative discrimination on the basis of caste was banned by law, and the caste system has been unconstitutional as per Indian law. Now, to discuss on some of the many laws and social initiatives that are supposed to protect and improve the conditions of the lower caste populations, here's Ms. Punam Kaushik from the Pragatishil Mahila Sangathan Delhi. I hope I pronounce it right. For our next speaker, Ms. Punam.
Thank you very much, Paul. And am I audible clearly?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah. And my co-panelist and the esteemed audience, thank you very much for this opportunity. And the subject given to me was caste system's constitutional provision and its limitation. As has been very nicely and correctly put by my former panelist, Mr. Vijay Singh, that actually caste is a reality of Indian society. And several historical struggles have been fought against caste oppression. Social justice became one of the main planks of anti-colonial movement around the time of transfer of power in 1947 itself. There were widespread peasant struggle such as Tebaga, Telangana, Caste, going on for land to the peasants. Internationally too, storm of the East was shaking the world. It is in this background that the Constitution of India was drafted, and the preamble of Indian Constitution says, let me quote some of the provisions of the preamble. We, the people of India, having solemnly resolved to constitute India into a sovereign, secular, democratic republic, and to secure all its citizens justice, social, economic, and political, liberty of thought, expression, belief, faith, and worship, equality of status and opportunity, and to promote among them all fraternity, assuring the dignity of the individual and the unity and integrity of the nation. Thus, several specific provisions in the Constitution have been made towards this direction. But if we see, we'll find that there are several other provisions which create hindrance in achieving the very goal stated in this Constitution. If we examine the provisions meant to ensure social, economic, and political justice to citizens by way of the Constitution, we can find out that the most important aspect are mentioned in Part 3rd of Indian Constitution, which ensures certain rights by the state to its citizen, namely Article 14, equality before law. Article 15 secures its citizens from every sort of discrimination by the state on ground of religion, race, caste, sex, or place of birth or any of them. However, this article does not prevent the state from making special provision for women, and this article does not prevent the state from making special provision for women and children, socially and economically backward classes, and for scheduled caste and scheduled tribes as well. Article 16 assures equality of opportunity in public employment. It further empowers states and state to make special provision for SC and ST inter alia. Article 17 talks about the end of untouchability. And then there are further provisions of fundamental rights. But for our topic, only above provisions are material. So I'm discussing on the above provisions only, confining myself. Let me begin with Article 17. Article 17 says, untouchability is abolished and its practice in any form is forbidden. But it is silent as to how and what will be the mechanism to end this. Who all will be answerable for the mechanism? There is no answerability, and the result is continuous social discrimination in Indian society on caste basis. Separate lanes of Dalits, separate water taps. One has to stand up if the dominant upper caste person is passing through. No midday meal for Dalit kids, or separate queues for Dalit kids in schools for getting midday meal, etc. These are some of the instances to quote from the rampant social discrimination. There are instances of physical violence, including murder, if a Dalit youth dare to assert against the social discrimination, even if by riding a mar by a Dalit for his wedding is a big crime, which is otherwise an important ritual for wedding for the upper castes. The Dalit women faces rape and sexual violence, and these all go not only unpunished, rather acquittal of the perpetrators is the norm. Several instances where upper caste dominants who committed house torching, rape, and sexual assault on women have been acquitted by the lower courts or sentenced under the lighter sections of the Indian Penal Code. We have some of the horrific examples such as Khairlanji, Saharanpur, Mirchpur violences. National Crime Record Bureau data for the year 2019 reveals an overall increase of 7.3% in crime against scheduled caste and scheduled tribes, and 25.8% cases of the total of such cases in the country are from Uttar Pradesh, which is ruled by BJP, led by Yogi Adityanath. In last 10 years, there is an increase in violence, and the rate of the increase is 281.75%. The Scheduled Caste and Scheduled Tribes Prevention of Atrocities Act 1989, the only act to provide punishment of caste-related violence, and an act directed towards achieving an end to untouchability as stated in the Constitution. This act itself is under attack even by the Supreme Court on various occasions. Again, referring from the data released by NCRB, and that is very recent year in 2019, it shows that under this act, rate of filing of charge sheet means police filing report on the basis of which trial commences in the court of law. This rate of filing of charge sheet itself has decreased to 78.5% as compared to last 10 years. 10 years ago, the rate was 88.5%. The conviction rate is 25%. As has been asked by the anchor, the video clip which has been shown in the beginning of this discussion, there was a question from the anchor that what is the cause of the low conviction rate? So let me say that the low conviction rate is primarily because of the biased nature of the investigating agency, which does not investigate the cases properly as per the mandate of law, but it acts with its own caste biases against the people for upper caste and against the Dalit biases they are having. And this often results in total acquittal of the perpetrators. The most bizarre example of such bias of police and bureaucracy is the recent instance of Hathras. I was a member of the fact-finding team, Pragatishil Mahila Sangathan, along with two other women organization and one women organization and NFIW and another organization, Anhad. We went to the Hathras and we met with the parents, we met with the relatives of the girl who narrated their ordeal, who told us how the bureaucracy, the district magistrate did not allow, and not only did not allow, but misbehaved with the parents, with the relatives, that they are not allowed to see the dead child even at the last time, and the way the cremation of the body was done is absolutely atrocious. And this proves that what is the nature, how the bureaucracy of India, how in this case the DM has exhibited, the DM has expressed his whole hatred towards the Dalit community, and even the human dignity was not allowed to take place. Even the last rites were not allowed to be attended by the relatives. So this is how the bureaucracy works in cases filed where the complainants are from the Dalit sections. Now, coming to the saying that this girl, this young minor victim who was raped and strangulated brutally by the upper caste boys, and the girl could not survive. The police and bureaucracy, instead of standing with the victim's family, harassed, threatened the family, and forced a midnight cremation against the wishes and in absence of the parents, family members, relatives of the girl who had sought morning time for cremation due to customary practices of no cremation after sunset. In this case, the administration and the police allowed huge big panchayat in support of the upper caste accused persons to threaten, vilify, malign the victim and her family, and several cases were filed against those who sought justice for the victim, deceased, and her family. Another example is from the judiciary, which has its own biases and which shows that why there is a low conviction rate. This is about Bhavari Devi, a Sathin who was raped by landlords in 1989 in a village called Bhateri in Rajasthan. As part of the government program against child marriage, which she was employed by government to carry out, she had gone to stop child marriage in the family of the local landlord, who was so furious with this intervention by a Dalit woman that the husband of this woman was thrashed and she was gang raped. The trial commenced, and in final judgment, the session judge commented that it is difficult to believe that men of upper caste will rape a Dalit woman, as it is necessary to touch the body, and thus acquitted the accused. This shows that the machinery on whose shoulder is the responsibility to stop discrimination and untouchability is itself so biased that it fails to nail down the perpetrators from the dominant upper caste who are guilty of practicing untouchability. Article 15 says equality, and state is empowered to make special provisions to ensure equality to all the citizens. Then Article 16 provides special measure to ensure education and jobs to special classes. But the limitation of this provision also lies in the very fact that no one is made answerable for the implementation of these provisions. It has been left on those very people, that very bureaucracy is being left to implement these provisions, which is full of upper caste, which is disinclined to uplift the SC, ST due to its caste hatred, though they are not concerned about the poor of upper caste too. Lack of answerability results in a situation where, despite there being just one sole eligible candidate for a given reserved post, the candidate is not appointed and no one is made answerable for this known appointment. Lack of answerability also results in backlog of vacancies. Total backlog reserved vacancies were 28,807 till July 2017. For OBCs, the data is 21.57% of total OBCs are employed in government job and 17.49% are from scheduled caste and 8.4% are from scheduled tribes. This is the data for 2016. So how is economic justice is to be ensured when there is no mechanism? And for whatever little mechanism is there, there is no accountability for failure to adhere to that. Actually, social inequality is ingrained into the economic inequality. And the most important aspect of economic justice to Dalits, to deprived section, is to have ownership over the means of production. In Indian context, it has to be the ownership over land. India is an agrarian country and vast section of Indian people, including Dalit population, lives in the villages. Landlessness is at the root of the caste system. Edifice of caste system stands on two pillars. One is the Dalits being devoid of means of production, that is land in the countryside, and second is endogamy. In the Constitution of India, there is no direct provision to provide ownership of land to the Dalits, to poor people. It is a struggle of landless peasants and Dalit peasants in various years during the British regime and thereafter also, through which land reforms laws and making provision for land ownership, lease of land for Dalits were enacted in various areas, various states. But these provisions are not implemented. In India, it is the experience of people at large that first they have to fight to get some laws written in the statute books, and then a more stringent battle to get these laws implemented. And no one is made answerable, and lack of punishment for non-implementation leads to a situation where all such provisions remains only on papers. Let's have a look at the status of land holding by the Dalits. As per census of 2011, 70% of Dalit farmers are laborers on farms owned by others. According to Zameen Prapti Sangharsh Committee, which is spearheading the agitation for implementation of lease of 1/3 common land to the Dalits in Punjab, 90% of the Dalit farmers are agricultural laborers. In Punjab, Dalits are 32% of the total population, and thus this is a state having highest percentage of Dalit population. The Punjab law, known as Punjab Village Common Land Regulation Rules 1961 and Punjab Panchayati Raj Act, provides 1/3 common land to the Dalits on lease for 1 year, and the Dalits of Punjab experienced that whole state machinery of civil and police administration pays no attention to its implementation, rather brutally suppressed in the direction. Since 2014, ZPSC has been experiencing this while getting the law implemented in a condition where the Act provides 1/3 of the Panchayat land will be reserved for leasing out to Dalits. But in reality, the practice was that rich belong to upper caste lease this land in the name of some poor Dalit, generally employed with them on yearly or half-yearly basis. The law of the land was openly flouted when the landless peasants organized themselves under the banner of Zameen Prapti Sangharsh Committee and launched the struggle for its implementation of the provision of law, but they met with brutal repression by the state machinery, which not only foisted cases on the leaders, activists, and the Dalit landless peasants, but also falsely heaped with landlords who physically attacked the activists, burnt their houses, and even accused landlords who were accused of murder. They were granted bail by the courts. So this aspect of social economic justice to the limitation of the constitution as well, recognized by Dr. Ambedkar in his historical speech at Agra on 18th March 1956, just few months before his death. To quote him, "I am very much worried about landless laborers. I could not do enough for them and not able to bear with their sorrows and hardship. The main cause of their woes is that they do not own land. That is why they are victim of insults and atrocities. They won't be able to uplift themselves. I'll struggle for them. If the government create any hurdles, I'll give leadership." So ownership of the land is the key to end caste discrimination, social and economic discrimination, and thus ensure social economic justice. And then there are some provisions like 330 and 332, which provides that there should be political seat. There should be elected, the members of scheduled caste and scheduled tribe should be elected, and there are reservations in parliament and legislative assembly. But we have different experiences that even if they attain the political power, we don't see that the position of the vast majority of Dalit people are changed. Rather, sometimes, and in fact, many times, when Dalit men and women struggle for land, these very Dalit forces sitting in the seat of power, they actually suppress and repress these people. And making a concluding remark, I just wish to say one small thing, that let me say that the Constituent Assembly of India, comprised of mostly upper caste Hindus who were not critical of Varna Vyavastha, the basis of caste system, and could not provide a framework which could really put an end to caste system. It is primarily part of the very structure of Indian society, which is semi-feudal, semi-colonial, and the successive role of ruling class in implementing anti-people policies affected the vast majority of people of Indian society across all castes and religion, with a special impact on Dalits, Muslims, tribal, and women. The present fascist government's agenda is to hand over each aspect of life of Indian people to the corporate, chiefly imperialists, be it health, education, land, jobs. Whatever Dalits have achieved through reservation in education and employment and land, it will be snatched as a result of pro-corporate agenda, which is being pursued by the big landlord, big capitalist ruling class of India. The way forward is to change the economic basis of society, strengthen the forces which are fighting for the revolutionary transformation of society that shall end the basis of caste discrimination, and in which social discrimination will neither have material basis nor find state support. Thank you very much. And I'm sorry that I've exceeded from the time limit. I express my
That's
thanks.
Okay. That's okay, Punam. Thank you so much. That was a not just enlightening, but really a powerful, hitting the root, giving us a glimpse of this historical basis in the current situation on where is the caste system anchored and the powers that perpetuate it. Thank you so much, Poonam. And after our two panelists, again, we invite everyone to type in their questions and their comments. And also, at the end of our program, we will be having a symbolic action. So we would ask to prepare you some calls and slogans to have our show of solidarity, because this February is a global solidarity month for the struggle of Indian people. And we will use this at the end of our program. So after our two panelists, we have invited our friend Kanti Swaru, currently a PhD candidate at the Center for Policy Studies at IIT Bombay. As part of his PhD, he is studying the sanitation work and urban theory. Also, thank you to our friends in Citizen News Org, CNS, Mr. Babi Ramakant and Professor Shiva Shankar for your wonderful recommendations. And also, we'd like to greet our friends from Belgium, from by Indigenous Women in the Philippines, and our people who are watching from Delhi, and everyone. So please type in your inputs and your question. And now we give 10 minutes to our friend Kanti. Kanti, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. Yeah, so thank you, Paul. Thank you for inviting. Indeed, I'm honored to be part of this panel. I also extend my thanks to Shiva, a dear friend, and we also co-authored a couple of articles on manual scavenging together. And Bobby Ramakant and Sandeep Pandey, thanks for introducing me to this platform. So to start with, I mean, I was told today to speak on something, I mean, of course, which is a topic that is close. It's not just we summit, I mean, I've been observed, and I grew up, so, understanding this effects of caste and structure of it. In fact, I would like to start. Yeah, I know I have less time, but I'll try to be as short as possible in this short span. In the 10 minutes, I would like to start with the Hathras incident. I mean, not to retell the story, what happened there. So, but when Vijay Singh and Poonam spoke about Hathras, or that we have seen this documentary, there is a profound, importance given to the incident and the new revolution that is taking place in terms of resisting the caste. For example, for me, as Hathras is, incidentally an important resistance movement that happened recently, because for the very fundamental reason, the sanitation workers protest demanding justice for the victim. So the sanitation workers there, you always see otherwise protesting for their wage increments. But here, the sanitation workers protested that we don't do our work unless the victim or the victim family gets the justice. So this is quite remarkable, because because sanitation in India, unlike other places in the professional way. 1 minute, Mami. Sanitation in India, unlike in other countries here, is very much, so caste-based, and these sanctions are heavily because, particular caste are dedicated to this caste work. And in fact, one of the world's dangerous and hazardous works are done by the manual scavengers of India. In fact, for Safai Karamchari Andolan, who is closely monitoring and trying to abolish this practice through advocacy, and by giving, by also joining the sanitation workers themselves, and in a way to liberate them, accounted, so they did a census of people that must have died in the sewers and manholes while cleaning. So their register shows it's almost more than 1900 deaths so far. India manual scavengers have died in manholes or in the septic tanks. Why I'm emphasizing this protest of sanitation workers is because the sanitation workers are, when they protest, so they are going against their caste duty, I mean so-called caste duty of doing sanitation work, and challenging that we don't do you don't do this sanitation work till the victim gets the justice. I mean, here the nexus is, for example, so I have to disagree with our Vijay Singh for at many places that he said about the trade union. I mean, trade unions have in the labor to pursue. Um, 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 I mean, here my point is in the sanitation work. So trade unions discourse or trade unions advocacy has been limited to wage increments, but they never asked for the abolition of this practice. And this practice right away itself is the caste system, the sanitation work itself. So when sanitation workers protest, it is not that they are protesting against their occupation; they are protesting against the caste system. And it is because the caste, so they are asking, so for the justice, so a victim who belongs to the same caste. See, for example, we have a long-standing argument, so caste is not something that can be hidden, ignored, denied, or deemed irrelevant, or even renounced. For example, I mean, this means that we emphasize that anyone trying to do any of these things, like denying or hiding or ignoring caste, or actually not taking caste seriously and effectively, misunderstanding and misrepresenting it as if it is a matter of individual choice or a matter of bygone era or a ritual or some phenomenon, because it is so much locational. You travel from rural to urban, it follows you, and where you go in urban, when you migrate from a rural neighborhood, tells you which caste you belong here and which occupation you do here. It's not that only non-pensioners, are or people from the Dalit and marginal caste or classes, but it is also, for example, non-pension workers belong to the software industry and other industrial labor and the business people. In fact, they own a lot of industrial, social, kind of a capital which can actually manifest in different ways and functions caste in more newer phenomena where it is easy for you to oppress you more than you can be oppressed in the rural places. And one form of oppressing the people who migrate from rural to urban is not trying to find, not so they suffer in finding a occupation other than doing menial jobs, and itself is a creation of a space dedicated to them in urban place for them to reserve that whenever they come here, and because they are leaving these villages itself is an indication that okay, so now it is the time, it is not my duty, and it is some caste person's duty. That way, this solidarity, so the solidarity the sanitation workers during Hudson incident shown to the victim is phenomenal, because they're acknowledging that it is the caste that we need to work, and they're not denying that caste doesn't exist, and they are not ignoring the caste is not important, and they are repurposing the caste in more different ways by forming solidarities, not just in the town where it happened, but also in 3-4 other towns and cities. I mean, I further argue what caste denial is not a caste abolition. In fact, the perfect opposite of it. For example, when you say denial or something like deny, continue to keep denying the caste, it in fact become a partial case of enabling caste enabling, merely for the upper caste when you don't talk about it. So they are going to get benefit. It seems We have two, thanks, I remember that I have 2 minutes. Yes, thanks for the reminder. And so we have, two different types of casteism that are in work, and which is lower casteism and upper casteism. And often lower casteism, when seeking for justice, rights are projected as bad, and upper casteism, and when it is accumulation of wealth and committing violence and atrocities on Dalits is, so, and imposing the patriarchal rules and regulations is seen as something universal and which is good for the upbringing of society. In fact, this way, it is also important we mobilize politically by using caste than fragmented communities of Dalits working independently, and all the communities politically getting mobilized and working for the caste and addressing this issue more, with rhetoric and also symbolic gesture will create a hope, and in fact is a weapon even as a democratic form to get united, unlike the militant and non-violent forms, so usually that we see from the Maoist groups. So I would like to end by saying that it is, so in fact, it is important hand in hand going with the texts that we have from the greatest philosopher of all time, Dr. Ambedkar, and other social reformers, including Mahatma Phule. So taking forward this tradition and having a continuous debate on the contemporary issues that we have. And thank you once again for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Kanti. That was enlightening on your part, on your work, and then by enriching the discussion given by our panelists. Now, we are moving on to our question and answer portion in our open forum. We have a list here of questions and inputs from our amazing audience in Zoom and Facebook. I will try to read each question and then maybe call the speakers and discussant to give us direct and short but sweet answer. We'll have 2 minutes or less for each answer so we can accommodate as much input from our audiences. May I request Poonam, Kanti, and Professor Vijay to open their videos and their microphone. We have here our first question. I think this has been touched earlier by Vijay and then by Poonam. Given that right now the world is looking at India, given its massive protest of the farmers. A question is, how is the Dalit or the lower caste and the Dalit and the issue of lower caste population relates to this current farmers uprising, or maybe their role, or how are they taking part or leading the current big struggle of the farmers? Maybe Poonam can give his answer first, and then Kanti, and then Vijay maybe.
Okay. So far as this farmers protest is concerned, and as we know that farmers are protesting against the handing over of the agriculture and the land to the corporates. That is a question. And that is what peasantry, that is what farmers are fighting against. And as I have referred in my paper also, I've referred about ZPSC, Zameen Prapti Sangharsh Committee, which is fighting for the land on lease for the Dalits. And let me say that in Punjab, ever since these ordinances were passed by the central government, in Punjab, farmers organizations have started building their agitations, and people from all sections, including Dalits, took part and are taking part in this struggle against handing over of the agriculture to the corporate, because they are realizing once the land goes to the corporate, so how will they get the lease? How will they get the ownership? Where the land will be distributed? So now this fight against corporate is being fought very well by the Dalits, and yes, people are realizing that actually this is a corporatization which is actually affecting each and every aspect of Dalit life. Look, whatever our people have, whatever little people could have achieved through education. We have seen in India in recent years, we have the example of Rohit Vemula. We have the example of Dr. Payal Tadvi, they were forced to suicide. Actually, they are institutional murders. So this is what the corporatization and will do, because whatever little will be given to the Dalits through their struggles will be snatched once corporate takes
Yeah.
over. So people are taking part in this fight. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Punam. Kanti, do you want to share anything in your area or your on the current big, massive uprising of farmers?
Yeah, so in fact, I'm not really following it from the same. Uh, I mean, I'm not keeping updated, but I was I was. I mean, I mean to say that I am not closely looking into it, but I can give
Yeah.
an insight one, which reminds me of the critical view on farmer protest. I mean, I come from the south, Hyderabad, so I mean, so largely the farm struggle right now, whatever is happening, is somehow. I don't want to use this word limited, but yeah, I mean, something, it is concentrated in the Delhi and Punjab, Uttar Pradesh borders. But in a way, it is also kind of showing the authority of the power, where, so Delhi being the capital, and now a border that have happened to stop these farmers, and so the not giving access to the corridors of power, and so making them sit on a boundary when they want to have a dialogue, not trying to so in government in a way is not trying to, or not ready to accept their demands. There's one part of it. Second part of it, coming to the farmers, or the people who have land in hand. You see also the atrocities coming from the Karan Chedu, Sunduru that happened in Andhra Pradesh, and also the Hathras. It happened in the farm, in the fields, farm fields. And oppressors are all on Dalits, again, are people who are having the land. I mean, technically, they are farmers. So, is it, in a way, from a critical Dalit view, can see, so in most cases, the landowning person in the local village is the oppressor on the Dalits, and he's the person who is committing the crime, atrocity on the women. In a way, I see. But it is also a movement. What is happening there in Punjab is, narrative of nationalism. So the way how nation supports this, and what kind of nationalism supports the present government, and it is more powerful to understand. So the current the distinction, this farm protest has actually helped us to examine the existing nationalism, and I would like to see that way, but I'll stop here.
Okay. Thank you, Kathy. Vijay, how does this current big farmers mobilization relates on the Dalit or the question of caste?
I couldn't quite follow you. Sorry.
Yeah, the question is, how is the Dalit or the issue of the caste system relates to the current farmers uprising against the tree farm laws?
Okay. What is happening is that, as far as I can understand, that what is all sections of the peasant communities, whether upper caste or lower caste or untouchable, they are in opposition to the corporatization of agriculture. And of course, some people have criticized the struggle because it is led by the rich peasantry, that they are kulaks. But when big capital is going to attack all sections of agriculture, then it doesn't matter if the struggle incorporates kulaks, but as it also includes middle peasantry, it also includes, as Poonam has nicely pointed out, it includes untouchables also. So it happens that in democratic movements, anti-big capitalist movements, anti-imperialist movements, that all sections outside the corporate sector come together and fight. And this is to be expected in countries which have not undergone a democratic revolution. You see, where the countries remain semi-feudal, semi-colonial, where imperialism is very strong, and feudal survivals are very strong, where caste system is very strong, it may be expected that sections of the bourgeois peasantry, the kulaks, will join you. And this is a norm in countries where kulaks, where agrarian revolution has not taken place. Yes, if agrarian revolution had taken place in India, there would be sharp contradiction between the kulaks and the agricultural laborers and the Dalits also. So I'm not worried about sections of the property classes joining the progressive movement.
Okay. Kanti, you want to add some a bit more? I can give you a very little time so we can move on with the next question. Kanti?
Oh, I am
Please
good.
allow me also if possible. Allow
Okay.
me, actually, I have sought some time.
Just very little so we can move on with our next question. Kanti first, then Poonam. Okay.
Yeah,
Kanti.
I'm good, Paul. You can.
Okay. Poonam, you want to add a little bit?
Yeah. A little bit that it is the ownership of land which will save women from the sexual harassment, from the sexual violence by the upper caste dominants. We have seen in Hathras. We have seen in Punjab when the women has to go to collect chara, to collect the fodder for their kettles. Then they are sexually violated, then they are sexually assaulted. So that's why this whole question of the women, Dalit women empowerment to have land, and that's why when they realize that the corporate is going to snatch the land, that is a reason that number of women farmers are participating in these struggles. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Our next question here is, we've been talking a lot of the limitations and the pressing issues impacting the lower caste. We have a question here. What are the victories or achievements of the anti-caste movement, or the Dalit movements, or the progressive groups and the people's movement in uplifting and asserting the rights and freedoms of the lower caste population? Can you share some of the achievements and victories that we have forwarded? Because this is a century-old, problem. Okay, maybe we can have Poonam first, and then Kanti, you want to answer, and then Vijay for answer again. Okay, Poonam.
Okay. Whatever we have achieved, that is a result of the struggle. Even the constitution itself, even the provisions of various provisions of laid down in section part 3 of the constitution, which I have read, that equality before the law, jobs, reservation, all things, these 1961 laws which provides the lease to the Dalits, even the 1989 Act, which says about the SC/ST Prevention of Atrocities Act 1989, whatever we have achieved is the result of the struggle. So this is the result of the people's movement. This is the result of the people's struggle. That's a separate thing. As I have also pointed out, that first you have to fight a pitched battle to get the laws written. Then the more stringent battle is to get those laws implemented. So whatever we have achieved, that is the result of the struggles. Thank you.
Okay. Kanti, what can you share about the current achievements or victories maybe in your area, or you have witnessed on these movements for the rights of the lower caste population?
Yeah, thank you. I think this is a very important question to answer, although it might take some time to give, so I have power cut, so I cannot share my video. Sorry.
Okay, okay.
Yeah. So you see from there are a couple of things that I personally have observed, one being the active Dalit middle class, so who initial years of implementation of reservation in the government sector utilize this opportunity and then help their community members to to escape this caste, to some extent escape this caste atrocity from their own the rural and the conservative locations to come to urban and to explore the new ways of understanding the civilized, new ways of understanding the lifestyle. So in fact, this is the section that remained the backbone, the middle class, establishing Ambedkarite political parties. In fact, Bahujan Samaj Party, Manyavar Kanchiram helped becoming the seizing the power, and even that helped the same Mayawati later. And politically, this active Dalit middle class became one of the vibrant community. And so far, because of contractual, in a way, neoliberal way of looking into the government structures where contract system was so dominant, and these people can't get jobs, more number of jobs, so these sections, because the number of seats that they take through reservation is low. And
Yes.
second thing, largely the symbolic in the pub, the symbolic symbolism or gestures that they do in a public space, and so now they can come freely to the streets and assert that, okay, so this is what we want, and this is what, and which was not earlier something imaginable. Even the places are inclusively becoming democratic and inclusive, and in fact, Dalits are teaching civilization to the upper caste and how to be there, and in a way, having more collaborations and running NGOs and going and finding evidences when some crime or atrocity happen. So these, of course, installing statues like Ambedkar statues, so they have some sort of emotional appeal, but it also marks social empowerment and dignity. So yeah, so and it, which was not earlier possible, iconization of your heroes, and it was banned. And now they have, in fact, even cities like Mumbai, Hyderabad, and Delhi. So whenever Ambedkar Jayanti happened, thousands and lakhs of people that come to offer just, so gather together to to celebrate in a more way, in a grand way. This celebration and this collective celebration without not afraid of anybody who is going, is something that is increasingly picking up, and more scholars and more research is also happening on it, and people. There are many more things that I can, give it to you, and we can also talk personally about it later. And right now, I will conclude here. Thank you.
Okay. Vijay, the victories and the achievements that this movement have achieved.
Well, if we go back to the demands of Dr. Ambedkar, the leader of the Dalits and Untouchables, we look at the demands of 1940s, we find that some of the demands which were put forward, however limited they look from the revolutionary point of view, have had an important role. For example, his demand that there should be reservation in the constituency, that there should be a reservation in jobs. That has made a lot of difference, because gradually more and more untouchables are coming into the schools and the colleges and the universities. These are leading to two trends. One is leading to a very progressive trend. That is that untouchables are now fighting for their rights. They were given space by the Indian Constitution and the struggles which took place after the independence. They were given space where they could struggle for further demands. But there's also a negative trend. The opening up of the place for struggle also meant that many of the untouchables, not the majority obviously, but a small stratum of untouchables are now going on the bourgeois path. They are saying we must have Dalit capitalism, untouchable capitalism. So I think there's a lot of progress, but there are problems also that I actually support the establishment of Dalit capitalism critically, because capitalism of the oppressed caste is always more positive in reference in comparison to the capitalism of the bourgeoisie. But these are positive and negative at the same time. So the main thing is that people are coming up and standing. So the other thing is that not everybody is standing because despite rights given to untouchables, it doesn't mean that they all struggle. Forget about the Dalit bourgeoisie, but there are conservative strata within the Dalit community which go towards the establishment. You see, even in the state of UP, very large state, you had the untouchable leader was there as chief minister, but many of the things were done were not necessarily good for anybody, let alone Dalit community. So if I do not think there should be higher standards for Dalit bourgeois leaders, because if bourgeois leaders are carrying out corruption, then Dalit leaders also have a right to carry out corruption. But class differentiation is taking place, which has long-term implications. And I think the demands of the 1940s of Ambedkar are far from being achieved, because he demanded that lands be given to the untouchable communities. He demanded that there be representatives of the untouchables in the police and in the state. We have not got that. Now, Ambedkar was not a revolutionary, but he was a great struggler for Dalit rights. Okay? And so, in totality, the absence of a democratic revolution in this country has led to a lot of problems for all the democratic castes, for the untouchables and the lower castes amongst the who are called other backward castes, and for the scheduled tribes. All these sections who form the majority of the Indian population have not benefited in a way they would have benefited had there been a revolution in this country. So we are looking at it from what is and not what could be. So I'll end there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vijay. Okay, so I think we have last question for now, and then I will give you a few minutes, maybe a minute or two, to give your final message. And then after that, we will have our symbolic action. Our last question is, we all know that we are still continuing to be burdened by this pandemic. So our question here is, how does the pandemic, the big talk now is getting the vaccines, healthcare for the people. How does the pandemic and its aspects impact the lower caste population? And what are the pressing issues we need to talk about regarding the Dalit concerns in this pandemic? Would like to answer first? Maybe Punam first, because Vijay just answered. Punam and then Vijay.
Sure.
Ladies first. Ladies first.
Oh, no. Anyways, I think your question is that what are the major concerns after this pandemic, that what
Yeah.
should be taken. I think there's a question. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, or the
See
current
what.
situation right now and what should be taken in
Yeah, yeah.
relation to our discussion.
Correct. Let me say that in context of India, I think even the corona was not knowing that how it will be used by the Indian rulers. So using this pandemic, what Indian government has done, which it was not actually able to do because of the people's struggle, that is, they have passed the farm laws, they have passed the labor codes, which anyway the working class of India was able to stop these rulers from passing it, but they used corona and they used and they passed they scrapped several laws and passed 4 labor codes, which is absolutely anti-workers. And then the third thing they have done is they have passed the NEP, New Education Policy. So this new education policy, which will further limit the access of the ordinary students from the higher education, giving more and more power to the corporatization, all these things just in abiding the conditions, let down abiding the conditions of the World Trade Organizations. They have actually passed all these 3 laws, and the most very serious thing this fascist government has done, apart from these 3 draconian attacks on the people of India, they have crushed the dissent. Whatever they have used, they have crushed, they have put lot of activists, the human right activists, the lawyers, the teachers, the intellectuals. They have, be it Bhima Koregaon, we know Bhima Koregaon, that when the Dalits were celebrating, when the Dalits were asserting their identity, they were asserting and they were celebrating their victory. What happened? This fascist government, this has arrested and incarcerated several teachers, activists, including Sudha Bhardwaj, Gautam Navlakha, Henny Babu, and lot more young, old activists. Despite their illness, we know what happened to Barbara Rao. Just 4 days before, he has been given bail for medical grounds, and after such a long time. And we know what they are doing with Stan Swami, an 82-year-old man. He is fighting. He has to wait for 20 days for a sipper to have a sipper. So this is what this Indian government has done in crushing the dissent. This is what they have done in arresting a 22-year-old girl, Disha Ravi, who was there to support the farmers' cause. And not only this, in Delhi, anti-CAA, anti-NRC movement, which was a movement by the people of, by the women of this country to fight for the equal citizenship right and to save the Constitution of India. This our the fascist authoritarian Modi government, it has arrested all those young girls. So these are the challenges. We have to build up a good people's fight. People are resisting. The peasantry, the farmers are showing us the path. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Muna. Vijay, corona in the caste system, in the lower caste population.
Yeah, I think, as I pointed out when Poonam has given a very comprehensive thing. So I'll just add one thing that I pointed out when I spoke, that the working class in settled jobs, pensionable jobs, is composed of upper caste and middle caste people, and that the untouchables, they are not accounted for. Now, there was a lockdown in the country with 4 months notice, 4 hours notice. And it was the untouchable communities who did not have regular employment, who did not have regular residence rights. They were forced to go back to their village. That is, 10 million people walked from the cities to their villages with their wives and children. You just imagine what an attack this was on the untouchable community. There was no food for them, no transport for them. So this was the most dreadful attack on untouchables. And the funny thing is, it is not regarded as an attack on untouchables. If you read the newspapers or even the revolutionary discussions, nobody has pointed out that this was an attack on untouchables. And there was no food, there was no money for travel. The government stopped the trains. Where trains were worked out for workers, they charged high prices. And it's very interesting. When Indians were brought from America by air and by England and other countries, they would not charge high rates, okay? But for the untouchables, it was a double problem. Not only they had to walk to their villages, they also had to pay to cross borders, the state frontiers, state boundaries between one state and another. So I think this was a very a big example of an attack on untouchables, which has gone back these last few months. And of course, as regards the working class, of which the untouchables form a big section, they will suffer the most, because as it is, the rules and regulations of the old labor laws are not carried out. Now there are more stringent labor laws in which right to form trade unions will be even more difficult, and where you will find that all kinds of the number of working hours will increase from a nominal 8-hour day. It will now become the practice of 14, 15 hours a day of working in the factories. So, these are very big attacks on the untouchables and the working class in general. And interesting thing is that even amongst the Dalit community, the middle class Dalits and the bourgeois Dalits, they're not bothered that the workers, that the people had to walk from the factories to their villages. They're not bothered. They are worried about certain things which affect them. They are not worried about the untouchables who are actually working as working class. So I'll end there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. So that's all of our question for now. That was very much exciting and interesting, and the discussion gave not only enlightened us but somehow inspired us to further support, form unity and solidarity, the people, and understand this deeply ingrained social aspects, hierarchy in India. So maybe a minute to close down our discussion, a message, closing message. What's our message to our friends from the Philippines, to Belgium, to Hong Kong, from all around the world watching our discussion right now? Very short, 1 minute, maybe Poonam and then Vijay.
Yes, your words of solidarity is material, is in fact equally inspirational, and it matters a lot that when our friends of farmers who are struggling, friends of the oppressed people who are fighting and who are struggling, it matters a lot. And really I feel that whatever way you can just stand in solidarity with the struggling people of India, it will matter, and it will be really, really helpful for the people to further their struggle on their just causes, and to formation for a just against all to in their fight against all kind of injustices, and to form and to build a new and just society. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Poonam. Vijay, your last messages?
Yeah, I just like to thank the ILPS, which has given us democratic people in India an opportunity to indicate some of the problems that we face. And obviously, the question of untouchables is not just a question of the most oppressed. It is the question of those who are very much exploited. So any solidarity with the oppressed peoples and the exploited peoples is very valuable. And I'm very happy that ILPS could organize such a program which will allow people abroad to follow some of the problems within Indian society, particularly this question, which is not very well understood outside India. So thank you very much for the organizers.
Thank you, and thank you so much. We're very sorry Kanti had to leave. He has an urgent situation right now, but he also extends our his greetings and thanks to everyone, to all the panelists and to all the attendees. Thank you so much for the amazing responses of our speakers and discussion. Also, would like to thank everyone who attended and supported our discussion today. This is just one of the many activities actually. We still have a few activities this month. We are sharing now on our screen the wonderful lineup of the webinars as part of the February 2021 Global Month of Solidarity with the Indian people. Okay, yeah. On the 27th, we have a discussion by the ILPS Commission 6 and PCFS on the tree farm laws. And the 28th, we will have a exciting cultural solidarity program to close down our month of solidarity for India. So please like, follow, and subscribe to our social media pages, to our website and email to get the latest updates on this event and for our upcoming events as led by ILPS or ILPS Commission 10 or IPMSDL. You can follow us on our social media and our website or email us if you have any questions or suggestions. So as we have mentioned by our speakers, the Dalit struggle in the caste question is deeply ingrained in the people's struggle against oppression of the elite and ruling power, benefiting and profiting from this slavery and exclusion, as I've mentioned earlier by our speakers. Unless the rights of the workers are realized, for the rights for better working and living conditions, to form unions, and against the escalating exploitation by the capitalist system, the rights of our lower caste system and the total abolishment of this system will not be realized, and they should struggle together with the peoples of the world against the imperialist plunder and war. And unless the rights of the farmers, as I've mentioned by Punam and Vijay, who are very much active in leading in this struggle of the farmers against the corporatization, neoliberalization of the agriculture industry in India, unless their right to land, to genuine agrarian reforms is realized, the question of empowering the lower caste, of really recognizing them as human beings and realizing their contributions to the society will not happen. So at this moment, let us open our cameras and microphones, show your calls and demands, and join us on our demands. Okay, everyone, maybe you can repeat after me the calls to end the violence against Dalits.
And
The violence against the Dalits.
Stop the attacks on people's rights and freedoms.
Stop the
attacks
attack
on people's rights and freedom.
Justice for all the victims of caste-based violence.
Justice
For all the victims of caste-based violence.
Repeal the tree farm laws.
Repeal the
Repeal
farm laws.
Junk the neoliberalization of agriculture.
Junk the
neoliberalization of agriculture.
Long live international solidarity.
Long live international
solidarity.
Thank you so much, everyone. And we hope to see you again on our next webinars.
Thank you
so much.
Thank
to
you
our
so much.
speakers and
Thank you.